Hello, welcome to the Tim Booker channel. Through the collection of audiobooks, we embark on the path to wealth. I wish you all a pleasant listening experience. Today, we are going to share a book called The Weaknesses of Human Nature. It is a social guidebook. Before we start listening to the book, let's hear a few sentences first. Treat others the way you want to be treated. People are only truly concerned about themselves, and that will never change. Human beings do not die from excessive work fatigue, but they perish from wastefulness and worry. These sentences are probably familiar to you, especially the last one. Your boss might have used it to motivate you when you couldn't memorize something. The words sound quite familiar, but do you know who originally said them? That person is Dale Carnegie. Dale Carnegie, a name that I believe many of you are familiar with. He is the founding father of modern Western interpersonal education, hailed as the greatest spiritual mentor and success guru of the 20th century. Why did Carnegie receive such a title? Let's take a look at his life experiences. It can be said to be an inspiring tale of an underdog's rise. Carnegie grew up in a poor family, suffering from malnutrition and having a weak and frail body. His clothes were always patched and too short, which made him the subject of ridicule by others. During his youth, Carnegie desperately desired to showcase his skills on the baseball field and become a heroic figure. However, his athletic abilities were lacking, so he could only watch from the sidelines. Later, he discovered that those who were good at public speaking and debate also attracted people's attention. He decided to embark on this path. At this point in the story, one would expect a perfect ending. Unfortunately, Carnegie did not have the talent for acting. He participated in 12 speech contests in a row but failed each time, to the point of contemplating suicide. However, when he participated in his 13th speech contest, he finally won a trophy for his school. This first taste of success had a profound impact on his life. From then on, he was no longer the little boy applauding on the street but became a figure of influence in his school, town, the entire United States, and even the world. Carnegie was a man obsessed with public speaking. Through his speeches, he ignited the spirit of countless lost souls, inspiring them to achieve success. It is said that Carnegie delivered approximately 150,000 speeches. This number means that, since Columbus discovered the American continent in 1492, during the 410 years that followed, Carnegie had to give at least one speech every day. Even if each speech lasted only 3 minutes, those 150,000 speeches would require 24 hours of continuous listening, equivalent to a full 10 months. Later on, Carnegie compiled his many years of experience into various writings, helping more people achieve self-improvement. The most famous book among these is the one we are discussing today, The Weaknesses of Human Nature. Some may think that since it was written by a success guru, it must be a collection of inspirational quotes for the soul. But that's not the case. First of all, I didn't make it clear earlier. Although Carnegie is known as a master of success, he is not in the forefront of motivational speaking. Instead, he is an expert in interpersonal relationships. He won't teach you how to make money or become famous. His books contain no inspirational quotes or motivational speeches. Instead, they provide practical guidance, step by step, on how to improve your interpersonal relationships. There are many books on the market that claim to do the same. So why do we specifically choose The Weaknesses of Human Nature? It's because this book is the pioneer and founding work of all subsequent books on interpersonal relationships. Around 1925, the University of Chicago and the Young Men's Christian Association conducted a joint survey aiming to determine what knowledge adults were most interested in learning. The survey results showed that adults were most interested in health-related issues, followed by improving their interpersonal skills. Based on these survey results, the project leader decided to hire Carnegie to teach an adult course on interpersonal relationships in Connecticut. Why did they choose Carnegie? Because since 1912, he had been providing a series of training courses for New York's business elites, gaining rich experience and a good reputation. However, when Carnegie wanted to find a practical and effective guidebook on interpersonal relationships as teaching material, he couldn't find a single one. As a result, he decided to personally write the course material for his classes. In other words, Carnegie did something that no one had done before. He filled a gap in adult education. Of course, we need to read this book carefully. Carnegie, by leveraging the common weaknesses and flaws in human nature, helps us address the problems that arise in interpersonal communication. So, how important is interpersonal communication skills? As early as the 1930s, the Carnegie Teaching Foundation discovered a pattern even in industries that require high professional skills. Only 15% of a person's achievements are based on their professional abilities, while the remaining 85% depend on their personality traits and leadership skills. This is not difficult to understand. Let's think about the rivalry between Xiang Yu and Liu Bang during the Chuhan contention period. In terms of family background and personal qualities, Liu Bang was no match for Xiang Yu. Yet, in the end, it was Liu Bang who became the emperor. Why? Because even though Xiang Yu was remarkable himself, he lacked interpersonal skills. Han Xian, when serving under him, did not receive proper recognition. Later, he defected to Liu Bang and became a highly regarded general, contributing greatly. Fan Zheng was honored by Xiang Yu as his father, a position second only to his own father. However, Xiang Yu easily fell for Liu Bang's scheme of sowing discord, which led to Fan Zheng leaving. Liu Bang's personal military capabilities were indeed inferior to Xiang Yu's, but his popularity and interpersonal skills far surpassed Xiang Yu's. Thus, Liu Bang had the last laugh, while Xiang Yu met a tragic end by committing suicide in the Wu River. Regardless of whether your work is related to business or not, everyone needs to address interpersonal issues in their daily lives. Even parents need to handle their relationships with their children properly. You can't always resort to criticism and scolding when your child makes a mistake. While interpersonal communication skills are important, most of us do not aspire to be great orators. What we need are practical techniques that we can apply in our work and personal lives. It would be even better if they can be as effective as a magic pill. The core issue addressed in the book, The Weaknesses of Human Nature, is how to quickly and effectively improve our interpersonal communication skills and become universally likable. Carnegie provides 3 principles to make everyone like you, and we will delve into them in detail. Now, let's take a look at the first method Carnegie suggests, genuinely caring about others. As a philosopher once said, the deepest desire in human nature is to be acknowledged by others. This statement rings true. You've probably encountered many people who go to great lengths to showcase themselves just to gain attention. That's why we see more and more people walking around with bare legs in winter and wearing fur coats in summer. However, we all understand that apart from thinking, what's wrong with them, we won't say another word. Why is that? Because whether in the past, present, or future, people will always be primarily concerned about themselves. So even if someone grows horns on their head, others will take a glance and think, how come I don't have horns? Let's consider a simple example. After taking a selfie with someone, who do you look at first? When editing a photo before posting it on Instagram, do you think about the person next to you? A survey conducted by the New York Telephone Company explored the frequency of word usage in daily life. Can you guess which word was used most frequently? It's I. In the 500 phone calls they studied, this word was used 3,900 times. Everyone keeps saying, I. These are all part of human nature. Of course, we need to read this book carefully. Carnegie, by leveraging the common weaknesses and flaws in human nature, helps us address the problems that arise in interpersonal communication. So, how important is interpersonal communication skills? As early as the 1930s, the Carnegie Teaching Foundation discovered a pattern even in industries that require high professional skills. Only 15% of a person's achievements are based on their professional abilities, while the remaining 85% depend on their personality traits and leadership skills. This is not difficult to understand. Let's think about the rivalry between Xiang Yu and Liu Bang during the Chuhan contention period. In terms of family background and personal qualities, Liu Bang was no match for Xiang Yu. Yet, in the end, it was Liu Bang who became the emperor. Why? Because even though Xiang Yu was remarkable himself, he lacked interpersonal skills. Han Xian, when serving under him, did not receive proper recognition. Later, he defected to Liu Bang and became a highly regarded general, contributing greatly. Fan Zheng was honored by Xiang Yu as his father, a position second only to his own father. However, Xiang Yu easily fell for Liu Bang's scheme of sowing discord, which led to Fan Zheng leaving. Liu Bang's personal military capabilities were indeed inferior to Xiang Yu's, but his popularity and interpersonal skills far surpassed Xiang Yu's. Thus, Liu Bang had the last laugh, while Xiang Yu met a tragic end by committing suicide in the Wu River. Regardless of whether your work is related to business or not, everyone needs to address interpersonal issues in their daily lives. Even parents need to handle their relationships with their children properly. You can't always resort to criticism and scolding when your child makes a mistake. While interpersonal communication skills are important, most of us do not aspire to be great orators. What we need are practical techniques that we can apply in our work and personal lives. It would be even better if they can be as effective as a magic pill. The core issue addressed in the book, The Weaknesses of Human Nature, is how to quickly and effectively improve our interpersonal communication skills and become universally likable. Carnegie provides 3 principles to make everyone like you, and we will delve into them in detail. Now, let's take a look at the first method Carnegie suggests, genuinely caring about others. As a philosopher once said, the deepest desire in human nature is to be acknowledged by others. This statement rings true. You've probably encountered many people who go to great lengths to showcase themselves just to gain attention. That's why we see more and more people walking around with bare legs in winter and wearing fur coats in summer. However, we all understand that apart from thinking, what's wrong with them, we won't say another word. Why is that? Because whether in the past, present, or future, people will always be primarily concerned about themselves. So even if someone grows horns on their head, others will take a glance and think, how come I don't have horns? Let's consider a simple example. After taking a selfie with someone, who do you look at first? When editing a photo before posting it on Instagram, do you think about the person next to you? A survey conducted by the New York Telephone Company explored the frequency of word usage in daily life. Can you guess which word was used most frequently? It's I. In the 500 phone calls they studied, this word was used 3,900 times. Everyone keeps saying, I. These are all part of human nature. Of course, Carnegie's colleagues remind us that genuine attention must be based on sincerity. Sincerity is the fundamental principle of dealing with people. Only when it comes from the heart can it achieve the desired effect. Otherwise, you will only deceive others and be accused of being insincere or hypocritical. Alright, after discussing so much, let's summarize. The deepest desire in human nature is to receive the attention of others. Therefore, the first method Carnegie suggests to improve interpersonal skills is to genuinely show interest in others. Next, let's talk about the second method to become likable by wanting to change someone, praise them first. A characteristic of human nature is that no one likes to be commanded. If you truly want to change someone, you must consider their perspective and use praise to motivate them. In Carnegie's training program, there was a student named George, who worked as a safety administrator in an engineering company. His job was to ensure that everyone entering the construction site wore a safety helmet. Although this was common sense, not everyone complied. Whenever George saw someone not wearing a helmet, he would assert his authority and order them to put it on. The employees would reluctantly comply at the time, but as soon as George left, they would immediately take off the helmet. Why did this happen? Wasn't George doing it for everyone's good? That's true, but nobody likes to be commanded. Even if you have good intentions, people don't like being ordered around. Once, while I was shopping, I saw a sign painted in bright red on a secluded corner wall that said, "No urinating or defecating here." Ironically, a few mischievous kids were competing to see who could urinate the highest on those very words. George's problem needed a solution. Carnegie suggested that he try a different approach. Instead of commanding employees to wear helmets, the next time he saw someone not wearing one, he could tactfully ask if the helmet size was uncomfortable or if they needed a replacement. Then, he could kindly remind them that helmets are for their own protection and suggest that they wear one. George was skeptical, thinking that construction sites were filled with rough individuals who wouldn't listen to him. However, he decided to give it a try. Surprisingly, those who didn't wear helmets gradually lost their resistance after hearing George's words. This was because George was no longer acting as a superior, giving orders. Instead, he started considering others and offering suggestions. As a result, people were more receptive. In the workplace, if a previously outstanding employee starts performing poorly, what would you do? Reprimand or fire them? These actions are not appropriate. Instead, you should use encouragement to change their state of mind, rather than simply berating them. Let's listen to the following example. Henry is the service manager at a truck dealership in Indiana. Lately, one of his mechanics has been performing poorly. In the past, Henry would have scolded him and fired him on the spot. However, after attending Carnegie's training program, Henry learned a principle: use praise to motivate others. So, he called the mechanic into his office, first expressing his appreciation for his work. Then, he pointed out that there have been some issues recently. Finally, he expressed his hope to see the mechanic return to his previous diligent and hardworking self. The mechanic, not wanting to let Henry down after receiving his praise, was motivated to work hard for the good reputation. This is actually a classic strategy. Stepping out of this book, do you remember General Patton's famous speech? "Men, the bullshit that you hear about Americans not wanting to fight and just wanting to stay out of the war is a pile of horse dung. Americans love to fight. All real Americans love the sting and clash of battle. When you were kids, you all admired the champion marble shooter, the fastest runner, the big league ball players, and the toughest boxers. Americans love a winner and will not tolerate a loser. Americans play to win all the time. That's why Americans have never lost and will never lose a war. The very thought of losing is hateful to Americans. The most important competition a man can engage in is a fight. It will bring out the best in you and eliminate the lowlifes." This speech made every soldier instinctively feel this truth and told themselves that they would play an important role in world history. It perfectly aligns with Carnegie's thoughts. Now, let's go back to the workplace. If you are a boss and need to change the company culture, you can consider doing it this way. Just replace war with company, soldiers with employees, and fighting with working hard, and you can replicate this strategy perfectly. But do you think this approach is only applicable in the workplace? It is also effective in everyday life. Carnegie had a friend, a lady who lived in a large house in New York with a beautiful lawn in front of it. She took great care of the lawn, but there were always mischievous kids around, messing it up. The lady had tried scolding and persuading them, but it didn't work. Later, Carnegie gave her some advice. He suggested that she find the naughtiest kid among them and give him an important task: become a private detective and protect the lawn. This little detective suddenly felt powerful and would patrol around the lawn, stopping any kid who tried to step on it. This solved the lady's problem once and for all. So, this is the second rule that Carnegie gives us: nobody likes to be commanded. If you truly want to change someone, you must consider others and use praise as a basis for their improvement. It sounds quite strategic, doesn't it? Yes, we all understand this principle, but Carnegie reminds us that if you believe these methods will definitely succeed in changing others, then you are being naive. When we try to implement them, we often become too impatient and forget about praising, replacing it with criticism, complaints, and nagging. However, criticism and complaints only have a significantly negative impact on your relationships, as in most cases, regardless of the severity of their mistakes, people won't readily accept criticism or blame. This is another weakness of human nature. Therefore, Carnegie gives us the third method to improve interpersonal skills: if you must criticize someone, do it cautiously. In fact, Carnegie advises against criticizing others. Criticism can be incredibly destructive. How destructive? The renowned British novelist Thomas Hardy almost gave up writing due to severe criticism. Criticism is like a boomerang, it always comes back to hurt us. When criticized, people tend to defend themselves and counterattack with equally intense accusations. Abraham Lincoln, during his career as a lawyer, once anonymously published a letter in a newspaper satirizing a local politician. This made the politician the subject of ridicule. He became furious and sought out Lincoln for a duel on horseback. If it hadn't been for the timely arrival of allies who pulled them apart, Lincoln might have been killed by the politician's lance. After this incident, Lincoln understood the most important principle of dealing with people: he never criticized anyone for anything ever again. But life is always full of drama. Lincoln, who made a firm decision not to criticize others, was criticized by his wife throughout their marriage. The greatest tragedy in Lincoln's life was his marriage, which was more saddening than the assassination. In their 23 years of marriage, Mrs. Lincoln constantly found fault with Lincoln and was never satisfied with anything he did. She complained that his posture was not upright enough, his walking style not elegant enough, his ears were unattractive, his nose not straight, his head too small, and his feet too big. She described him as looking like an old invalid. Mrs. Lincoln's criticism and complaints caused Lincoln immense pain. He intentionally stayed away from home for months on end and lived in small inns in the countryside year after year. There are many similar stories like this. Tolstoy said, "All unhappy families are unhappy in their own way, and most of these conflicts are caused by criticism and nagging. If you desire a happy marriage, remember not to criticize." But how can ordinary people restrain themselves from criticizing others? To reduce the negative impact of criticism, most people use a technique: praise before criticism. When I was studying, my mother would always ask me to get rid of my careless habits. After every exam, she would say, "Child, your test results are really good. I'm proud of you. But it would be even better if you spent more time on algebra." My mother believed that this approach made her appear kind-hearted. At first, I found it useful, but later, whenever my mother said she was proud of me, I felt deflated like a punctured balloon because I knew that it was only said to prepare for the criticism that would follow. This way of speaking made the previous praise untrustworthy and unlikely to change my study habits. Carnegie tells us that all we need to do is change one word, and all the problems will be solved. Which word should we change? Of course, it's but. Change it to and. Let's experience it once again. Child, we are truly proud of your performance this semester, and if you can maintain this attitude toward learning, your algebra grades will improve as well. With this approach, we can genuinely feel the praise from our parents, and the purpose of parents' education is achieved. The highest form of criticism is not to criticize or, in other words, to be tolerant. Hoover, a famous stunt pilot, experienced a dramatic incident. When he was 300 feet in the air, both engines of his plane failed. Luckily, Hoover reacted swiftly and parachuted in time, saving himself from injury. However, the expensive plane was completely destroyed. The first thing Hoover did after landing was to check the plane's fuel tanks. He discovered that the propeller plane was equipped with jet fuel, clearly indicating a mistake made by the mechanic responsible for its maintenance. We can imagine how Hoover felt at that moment. This foolish mistake could have cost 3 lives. He had every reason to criticize the careless worker, but he didn't. Instead, he reached out, grabbed the worker's shoulder, and said, "To prove that you won't make the same mistake again, I want you to help me maintain my F-51 plane tomorrow." Faced with such criticism, I believe this worker would have been extremely grateful and would never make the same mistake again. So, this is Carnegie's third method for improving interpersonal skills: it is best not to criticize others. If you must criticize, do so cautiously. In summary, let's review the essence of knowledge this book provides us with. The biggest challenge adults face in daily life is perhaps interpersonal problems. The core issue addressed in this book is how to quickly and effectively improve one's interpersonal skills and become popular among people. Carnegie combines his principles with human nature and gives us 3 methods. First, the deepest desire in human nature is to gain the attention of others. Therefore, if you want to have more friends and be welcomed by everyone, start genuinely paying attention to others. Second, nobody likes to be commanded. If you genuinely want to change someone, try considering others and use praise as motivation. Third, in most cases, no matter what mistakes people make, they won't blame themselves or readily accept criticism. So, if you must criticize others, do so cautiously. Objectively speaking, the advice in this book is correct, but actually implementing it is challenging. For example, when you are unhappy, it is easier to lose your temper and criticize others than to praise them. People tend to naturally talk about what they want to say rather than focus on others. In fact, this book doesn't just give us knowledge but helps us cultivate new habits. It requires a considerable amount of time, constant perseverance, and active practice in daily life. The great writer Shaw once said, "A man learns nothing from being told." Therefore, let's consider this book as a handbook. When you need to persuade others, don't succumb to your instinctive reactions because they are often wrong. Instead, think about the methods provided by Carnegie and try to follow them. See what kind of results you can achieve. Finally, I hope you become a social butterfly, a popular person both at home and in the workplace. Congratulations on completing another book. Thank you for your support and attention. Please subscribe to the Tim Booker channel, like, and share this valuable knowledge with your friends. Let's combine wisdom and practice, achieve our financial goals, and create a better future. Thank you, everyone.